We have some developing news from the NHL tonight. NHL insider Elliotte Friedman's reporting some news on a potential NHL return in a 24-team playoff format, which is different than we had learned about a few days ago. We'll discuss all the latest news on the return coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some breaking news this evening from Elliotte Friedman, NHL insider for Sportsnet, as well as some other reports from ESPN as well, corroborating a report indicating that the NHL might be close to having some finalized plans to make a return to play and to complete the NHL 2019-2020 NHL season. Now, a few days ago, we had reported on a playoff format which included 24 teams, which is also still on the table, but the format is a little bit different than we had previously discussed, and let's take a look at how that could work based on these new reports. Now, it would be a conference-based approach here with two conferences of 12 playoff teams. The first round essentially would be a play-in, wouldn't really be considered a full-fledged playoff round, but they would have the opportunity to play in to get to the round of 16 like we would normally have. So 12 teams per conference, the top 4 teams in each based on points percentage, which is something we didn't look at on our last video, will be the teams getting the first round bye. And it's believed, based on the report from Friedman here, that the teams that are getting a bye would still get to play some NHL action to be able to kind of brush it up and get their skills sharpened so they're not coming in cold, because obviously that was a concern that I know some teams were expressing. As much as it's nice to get a bye further into the playoffs, the other teams will have more games played, have a chance to get more ice time, more action, and it could be a sharper team and more dangerous team for these top teams to play in the next round when we get to the round of 16 NHL teams. So how it would work, we'd have the top 4 teams in each conference, which based on points percentage would be the following. In the Eastern Conference, we'd have the first seed would be the Boston Bruins, number 2 seed would be the Tampa Bay Lightning, the number 3 seed would be the Washington Capitals, and the number 4 seed would be the Philadelphia Flyers. Over in the Western Conference, we'd have the top team being the St. Louis Blues, the number 2 seed being the Colorado Avalanche, the number 3 seed being the Vegas Golden Knights, and the number 4 seed being the Dallas Stars. So those 4 teams would not play in the initial round, the play-in round, which would be likely a best of 5 based on this news report that came out on Elliotte Friedman this evening. So this first round, the play-in round, would be best of 5, with all remaining rounds being a best out of 7. How this would work is the 5th ranked team would play the 12th base team and would play, then the winner of that series would play the 4th ranked team in the next round. You'd have 6 versus 11, with that winner going on to play the 3rd seed in the next round. Then you would have the 7th seed versus the 10th seed, and then that winner would go on to play the 2nd best team in the conference. And then you would have 8 versus 9, with that winner going on to play the top seed. So let's take a look here at some of the examples on how this would play out based on where everything finished when the NHL season went on pause. So in the Eastern Conference, we'd have 5 versus 12 being Montreal versus Pittsburgh, and that series winner would go on to play the Philadelphia Flyers in the next round. You'd have 6 versus 11, which would be Carolina versus the New York Rangers, with that winner going on to face the Washington Capitals. Then you would have 7 versus 10 in the East would be the Islanders against the Florida Panthers, with the winner going on to play the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then you would have 8 versus 9, which would be the Maple Leafs against the Blue Jackets, with the winner going on to play the Boston Bruins. So there's still a possibility here we could have another matchup of Toronto versus Boston yet again if the Maple Leafs would be able to get past the Columbus Blue Jackets. But either way, that's how the Eastern Conference would shape up. Let's take a look at the Western Conference here. The 5 versus 12 series would be the Edmonton Oilers against the Chicago Blackhawks, with the winner going on to face the Dallas Stars. You then have the Nashville Predators against the Arizona Coyotes in the 6 versus 11 spot, with the winner playing the Vegas Golden Knights. And then 7 versus 10, you'd have the Canucks versus the Minnesota Wild, with the winner going on to play the Avalanche. Then you would have the 8 versus 9 series, which is Calgary against Winnipeg. So an all-Canadian series, with the winner going on to play the defending Stanley Cup champions, the St. Louis Blues. So clearly these matchups look a little bit different than we had discussed the other day. Of course, we didn't factor in point percentage, and based on the initial reports on how things were progressing at that time, the matchups I gave were what was being discussed at that point. But now the other part of this as well from ESPN, they're reporting that the NHL is likely going to have 2 hubs for this. So probably 1 hub per conference, with each spot being able to house up to 12 teams. I know there's been different locations that have been discussed that could host up to that many teams. I'd be very surprised if Edmonton wasn't one. I know the Premier of Alberta is pushing really hard for the Oilers and Edmonton to be one of the host cities, and based on their facilities and everything going on in Alberta, it does make a lot of sense. They have a very high COVID-19 testing capacity. They've got a brand new arena with a lot of practice facility, ice surfaces around them. They got a brand new hotel attached to their new arena that could host all those teams. They have the resources and everything available there within the city and what the province can provide as well from the safety perspective and testing, etc., to make everything work. So they're pushing really hard to be a host city. So I'd be surprised if Edmonton wasn't one of them, and I would probably be surprised if the other one might actually turn out to be Vegas. Not 100% sure, but obviously they've got tons of hotels. They've got a lot of new ice development there since the Golden Knights have come to town. So they very well could be. That's just speculation on my part. I've seen other talk about Toronto, Vancouver. There's a few other cities in the U.S. as well, including Minnesota, Dallas, etc. There's lots of places that have been rumored to be host. I know the state of Florida seems to be open for business in that regard as well. So there is potential that it could be hosted somewhere in Florida. Of course, we got the Lightning and the Panthers down there. Not sure exactly what their full capacity is, but there's a lot of talk right now that the NBA is very close to being able to announce a return and being hosted in Orlando with all the teams staying in Walt Disney World. That seems to be a strong possibility. There's been some reports that I've seen indicating that Disney's already starting to work on doing some accommodation upgrades and trying to get ready for that. So there seems to be a lot of traction on that happening. So with the NBA being in Florida, the NHL might end up elsewhere. It's just difficult to say, but the main city I think that stands the best chance, that's been pushing the hardest, at least all the reports I've seen, is Edmonton, but I guess we'll have to be seen. I know it was very recently in the last day or two we've seen an update between Canada and the United States that their border closure is going to remain for another 30 days, closed to all non-essential travel. There was some concern that could hinder things, but early reports from the NHL seem to indicate that they don't feel that will be a problem. They feel that wherever the hosting is going to be taking place, that they're likely going to end up deeming them to be essential. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to get around the border closure, but it doesn't seem to be a big concern for the league and all the reports that are coming out here. Now, another thing to factor in here as well as potential draft lottery, all those other things. It's hard to say when we're going to get an announcement on everything, but Elliot Friedman is reporting that an announcement could come as soon as a couple of days. It's believed that there could be a meeting on Thursday where they could vote on this scenario, and that we very well could have an announcement here very soon, like I said, in a couple of days. That would be nice to know as a hockey fan when things could go. But as far as dates go, like in the last time we talked about this, I gave you my thoughts, my speculation on when I thought it could go down. Personally, they need to give time for teams to get all their players back in their cities. They need to allow time for travel. They might have to allow time for self-isolation depending on border rules, and if they have to isolate when they return, will they get an exception? I mean, considering they're not giving exceptions to other people, that might not go over well if they don't have to do that. They need time for probably a mini training camp. So I'm personally thinking that we're probably looking at July hockey would be my best guess. Maybe not even early July, possibly closer to mid-July. Difficult to say what their plans are. Play out probably over a 2-month span. And then for that point, they could have the Stanley Cup awarded probably around end of August, early September, somewhere around there, then have an off season. But it is believed that they very well might be having the draft lottery in June, that the draft itself may no longer be in June. That doesn't seem to be on the table as much now. There was a lot of talk before that theory had a lot of legs. The NHL was really pushing to have a draft in June as originally scheduled. That seems to be all but dead from what we're hearing now. But the draft lottery itself could take place in June. So obviously we'll see how that's going to work. Obviously there's 7 teams that wouldn't be playing in this play-in or playoff rounds. So I'm not sure if they'd be the only ones included or how that's going to work. I really don't know. I guess we'll have to wait for more details. But the lottery itself could be in June from what we're seeing. That with the actual draft to be a couple of months down the road, I would say probably September. If the Stanley Cup is awarded, then they could have the draft even a week or two later. Have a 4 to 6 week period after that for an off season, so they can have free agency, settle everything else, and maybe look at a December to January return for the 2020-2021 NHL season. But I think a big part of next season will be as well, trying to delay it, not only to give them a break from finishing this season, but with the hope that they might be able to get fans in the stands. That's going to be a big part of next year. They're obviously losing a lot of revenue not having fans in attendance, not being able to play right now. And if that continues into next year, obviously they'd probably play without fans because it's better than not playing at all. At least they can generate some revenue. But if they can hold off a little bit and have fans in attendance for the full season, even if it's condensed a little bit, it would still be better from a financial perspective. So I guess we'll have to wait for further details on that. But based on his reports from Elliot Friedman, we could have an announcement here as soon as the next few days. Wouldn't be shocking to see the NBA go first, possibly announce a return to play with the intention of housing all the teams. Walt Disney World in Florida, that seems to be gaining a lot of traction. That announcement very well could come first, followed by an NHL announcement with their hub cities and everything else lined up. Hard to say exactly. Even if they vote on this format on Thursday, doesn't mean they're going to have everything else completely lined up to make an official announcement until a little bit after. So I guess we'll have to remain to be seen. But this is good progress as a hockey fan. It's exciting to hear. And hopefully we get something soon and can actually look forward to having NHL return sometime here in that hopefully not too distant future. Let me know your thoughts on this playoff format and the NHL's return down in the comments, and we can just continue discussing further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.